Hey, Dave LaCalia with HeadGames Motorworks. Today we are going to pocket port a BMW N20 head. Check it out. So here we got the BMW N20 head, and this is basically a four-cylinder version of the BMW N55. Now what's cool about BMW is they make all of these cylinder heads, and a lot of the parts kind of go together. A lot of the nomenclature, a lot of everything kind of correlates to each other, so there's not so much confusion. So this is why we can go in here and we're going to pocket port it. And we really don't need to put it on the flow bench or do all that stuff. And I know you guys are going to be yelling at me, got to put it on the flow bench. But we did a lot of R&D on the BMW S55. Our program's out there. It's already making power. So we're just going to take everything we know from that and apply it to this. What's also really cool is this thing is actually going to make like 600 and something horsepower out of a four-cylinder BMW. And I don't think a lot of guys are aware that there is even a BMW four-cylinder that is capable of power. But I know there's a small group of you that actually loves these things, and we're going to have something for you very soon. You'll see here that there is this huge ledge inside the pocket of this head. Now, a lot of guys think that this is a part of the DI system, and you would be correct. A lot of times the manufacturer will make this area here a little bit smaller, and I guess they're kind of directing the air into the center of the cylinder versus all around the valve. But this is going to get direct injection, and it's also going to have port injection, so we are good to go on removing all this. Now basically what we're going to do is we're going to enlarge this in relation to the size of the valve. What I mean by that is there's going to be a percentage of the size of the valve, which I'm not going to tell you what percentage it was, but I will tell you it is closer to 90% of the size of the valve, and that is going to make it flow. Now we're going to make it flow a good 30 to 40 CFM just here, and then another 20 CFM or so from the valve job. On the exhaust side, there's less of a gain, because from OEM, BMW smoothed this area out, and it is pretty much the right percentage to the size of the valve. But here is where the gains are. We're going to be able to blend all this in, and you get a gain. The biggest gain from the exhaust side is actually not from the port, but from the valve job. And then we blend all this into the valve job, and that's where the gains are. I think it's pretty common that a lot of people think that you have to port something in order to get a gain. And that's not always true. There is a lot. Actually, the most important part of any cylinder head on the planet is the valve job. So the porting is definitely a portion of it, but it's not everything. This is what we're going to be grinding with. We have a Makita GD0603 grinder, and I have two burrs here, and I want to tell you why I have two burrs. You notice that one is obviously shorter than the other. If I were to not be doing this on camera, I would use the shorter one because there's really not a lot of room to go down. Like I don't really need the length, but because we're filming and somebody's filming me, I needed to use the longer one. Now, understand that you don't always have to use, when you buy a HeadGames burr, we usually buy multiples and then you use them for different purposes. So what I just quickly learned is I really don't want to use the 1/2" burr. I really want to use the 5/8. Don't want to use the 5/8 because it's going to make it a lot easier to shape and a lot easier to keep the shape. By putting the biggest burr I can stick in there. See here, before and after, this thing's big. This thing's right. I just want to show you guys what I did. Now, when you grind, I want you to pay attention to, this is just fingers. fingers, right? One finger even. It only goes that high, and I'm not doing anything else. You want to do what your body will naturally do. Now I see some guys where we do the short turn and do all kinds of stuff, and you don't want to do that. You just want to keep where your body would go naturally. Now, and the burr will go naturally. So it will naturally go towards the center. So I do each wall, and then I do the center here, and that's it. You want to bring the work to you. You don't want to go to the work. You also notice that there is a little bit of section here. It's probably going to go all the way around, and the angle of the bottom angle into the bowl is obviously not going to allow you to make this completely straight, because it'll take out part of this. A lot of guys are going to think that you need to remove this, or you need to weld it and fill it and do all kinds of crazy shit, and you do not need to do any of that. Just leave it alone. It's not going to hurt you. So what I do is I'll use one burr, and as I said, this was the 5/8 high helix from HeadGames. And I'll go in there. I like to keep everything in order. And what I'm going to do here is I'll rough everything out, and I'll do that with the 5/8 at high speed, and then I will do all of it. Like I'll do short turns and all of that, and then I go back over it with the double cut from HeadGames, and I'll do that at slow speed. And this way, as I said, I do one wall at a time. I do the floor. I do all that because I want to keep it in order, and I want to keep it consistent. Consistency is the key here. I want to show you guys something else here. Now, when I go near the seat, and you're probably like freaking out here because it's such a big burr and it's burly and it could take the seat out very quickly. What I do is I use the back side of the burr. Basically, you're on an angle using the back side of the burr, and see, I didn't even touch the seat. Yes, there is a transition there. It will not go away, but it's going to make it a little bit smaller. But I'm using the back side of the burr against the seat, and this way I keep my shape and I'm not beating up the seat. So I wanted to show you guys when I was doing the porting from this side, from the bowl side where we just were, and I'm pushing up. I'm not going all the way up here. I'm keeping it right in this corner. Now we still have to shape this corner, and we got to get rid of this. But I do want you to notice how consistent they are from hole to hole, because when I was saying we keep everything in order, it means it keeps it consistent. And if you keep it consistent, that is your objective. When you get to porting for years and years, you want to make sure that you get to the point where you're just very consistent with all of your work. All right, short turns are done. I should say not done, just roughed in. Now we can go on to the exhaust side. One thing I want to mention here is you saw how I was porting. I took out the big nub that was in the center, and then what I do is I go all the way in and I bring the turn out. This is supposed to be a turn, so you want to make it round again. So the exhaust side is pretty much the size underneath the valve seat, but we're going to do some blending. We're going to blend is this area right here. We're going to blend here and here into this. So you can see it's a little rough. So we're going to make all that blendy. You guys might be wondering why I'm not measuring anything, and that's because I'm doing it behind the scenes, and I'm using these for doing that. So I use this and a caliper, and you could also use this because you want to make sure you're being consistent, right? Remember I said consistency is key. Now we're roughing in. I just want to make sure that I mention this because I might forget. So you just set it and then go through all these and make sure you basically, well, what I do is I make sure I have the same pole because it's a round object, and obviously you're not going to get it completely straight where you are, but you want to make sure that they're all consistent. I'll stop at the same spot, and that's how I do it. So now we're all roughed in on the exhaust. You'll see that there's this spot here that is not touched, and that's okay because we are going to go back in here with the HeadGames 3/8, and we're going to blend it all in. Now we're actually going to skip the short turn for the rough end because the short turn is actually pretty decent. We're just going to blend it in when we do our final grind, and we don't have to take a lot of meat out of it. But this is all going to clean up, and there's like a little lip underneath the valve seat. We're going to fix that, and everything will blend in. I know you guys are, some of you novices might be looking at this and saying, "Oh my God, he hit the valve seat!" But this is okay because we're going to be removing this anyway when we do the valve job, because this is the only spot here. There's like a big lip, and we're going to take it out, and then it'll be actually to size. So now we got the HeadGames 3/8 double cut burr, and we're going to slow the speed down and just go back over it and make it look nicey nice. Here we are after the 3/8. Total difference. You guys remember what it looked like before? We are much, much finer grind, right? And that's all we're looking for. We are not going to sand this. We are just going to fine grind it, and that's what keeps the cost down. The surface finish doesn't really mean anything, and we can just make it work. Now it's time to finish up the head. And I had to go back over it with the 3/8 again because, well, it was just too rough. But here we are, we're all blended, and now it's time for valve guides and valve job. What I do want to show you, Ho, is you see the intake here? See that's still there? Guys, you would have to dig this whole area out, and you would have to make it actually too big in order to get this out. What happens is we're going to do a valve job, and this will make it actually a little bit smaller, but you just don't want to get rid of it because you don't like the way it feels. Size matters here. If you make it too big, you'll lose more than you gain. All right, that does it for us today. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Toodles.
HeadGames!